Welcome, everyone. This is my first attempt at doing a Zoom video, and with me today is Michael Muller. And we're going to be talking about 5 artists or records that, we don't think are shown in the VC. I might do some regular Zoom sessions, I don't know, but I'm happy to have Michael on for my first ever. Michael is an artist in his own right. So, Michael, you want to tell everybody about yourself?
Sure. My entrance into the VC was from Paul, BarakaPDub, so it's an honor to be here with him. This is also my first time to be in one of these adjoining video Zoom calls here. I'm a musician by trade. I play in a group called Femme, and I also release solo records under my own name, and am a vinyl collector, sort of new to the jazz and classical world, and most of my knowledge resides in kind of the experimental ambient world. But like I said, BarakaPDub was my entrance into this community. So happy to be here to share some records with you all.
So to kick things off, Michael, I think you being the guest, I think you should start.
Okay. The first album I have is Rachel's. This is an album called Systems Layers, which I believe was their 3rd or 4th full-length release. This was pressed maybe 4 or 5 years after they debanded. This group is from Louisville, Kentucky, on Quarter Stick Records. And I believe this originally came out in 2003 and was repressed in 2016. Great gatefold album, double on white vinyl. Rachel's is headed by a woman named Rachel Grimes, whose primary instrument is piano. It's sort of like a chamber folk, classical, post-classical ensemble with cello, piano, drums, and guitar. Mostly instrumental, has some field recordings, but this is just one of the hugest influences to my own music creation. So my band Femme started in 2006, so this came out just a couple years before we began, and it was a huge impetus for our own creative output. And I think this is still in print, and you can get it relatively inexpensively. It's probably sold out at the point of, the origin points and record labels and shops, but you can definitely get it on Discogs or eBay for a reasonable amount. Just lush instrumentation, highly recommended if you're a fan of kind of post-rock or like kind of contemporary classical stuff. Rachel, Systems Layers.
So, this is what I love about the VC is that, there is just so much music out there that I'm unaware of. So I'm betting all 5 albums you're going to show, I don't even know. So I'm curious, how did you connect with that album? Was it just random that you found it, or were you sampling music?
My musical partner, Rob, who plays piano in Femme, had seen them perform on tour. At the time, he was going to school at University of Texas, and they played in a little performance hall on campus. I believe it's a quintet, so a 5-piece. And he just kind of went just to check it out because he thought it sounded cool, and he was kind of bowled over by it. So not soon after that, he was like, dude, you got to listen to this record. That was 2003, so this is 17 years old. They're not really spoken about that much, but in the musical industry, in terms of musicians that play kind of classically arranged and minimal music, I think they're pretty well known, and especially for being on Quarter Stick Records, which was part of Touch and Go in the mid to late 90s in the Midwest, in Louisville and Chicago. Members of this band were also in a group called Shipping News, and I believe a band called Rodan, R-O-D-A-N. So kind of in the indie emo kind of late 90s world as well.
Yeah, so I've heard of Quarter Stick, and I have a few things on that label, but I've never heard of Rachel's. It's totally new to me, so I'm going to be checking that out.
This is a good starting off point. They have 3 or 4 other records that are just fantastic too, that are a little more esoteric and maybe not quite as melodic. But I don't know, maybe there's 20 tracks on here. A few of them are kind of short, like interludes. but very digestible and, you know, very approachable. It's like hard to not connect with it, I don't think. Yeah. All right.
All right. Yeah. So most people shy away from music that's in a foreign language. I don't. So you know, people just, if it's in a foreign language, you know, the tendency is people just lump it into world. But you know, I have a lot of French music, and one of the bands that I've connected with the past couple of years is Femme, and this is their album Mystere, and it's a wonderful blend of French chanson, pop, psychedelic, post-punk. I mean, they're kind of all over the map, and this is out on Born Bad Records. And so I really like Born Bad because, you know, they do some interesting compilations, but, you know, there's a lot of underground bands coming out of France that, you know, they pick up, and yeah, they just put out records by them. So they only have 2 albums out. This is their first one, and I want to say that they started around 2011, 2013, but I think this came out about 2016 or so. But yeah, it's just fantastic. I recommend sampling it because, yeah, each song is different from the previous one. So it's just one of those wonderful eclectic mixes of an album. And, you know, the albums that really, really stick out to me are the ones that, you know, will play around with different genres, and they're not afraid to be pigeonholed in one specific place. Yeah. So, yeah, this is Mystere, and I highly recommend it.
Wow. Yeah, that's definitely new to me. And that label also I've never heard of.
So for the folks that are watching, you know, if you go to Bandcamp and look up La Femme, yeah, you can easily sample everything that's on that album.
And was your entrance to this band from the label? Like,
gee, I want to say that it was sampling. I found it at random, actually, and you know, my habit on Thursday and Friday nights is just to sample new music, and so I'm pretty sure that I came across it during a Thursday or Friday night sampling session.
That sounds good. You have a dedicated time of the week to do that. Nice.
Yeah, I usually carve out 1 hour in the week, and you know, with Bandcamp, you know, I get slammed with 60 or 70 emails Thursday and Friday, and it's like I'm very selective. It's like if I know the label and I trust the label, then yeah, I'll definitely sample the music that's there. But sometimes I'll branch out and try and find some different things.
That's great. And maybe it would be nice to list all these records in the description. So.
Oh, absolutely. So and if I can get sporty, I'm going to try and put sound samples.
I have faith in you.
All right.
Next up, as I mentioned earlier in my little intro, I'm somewhat new to jazz. I actually got into jazz from watching your videos, Paul.
Okay.
Pretty much. Like, I mean, I had Getz and Gilberto growing up, and you know, of course, I'd heard Kind of Blue and Love Supreme, but I never like got into anything past those hallmarks. But Music Matters was kind of my entry point to the kind of audiophile and jazz world. And 2 of the first records I got were Kenny Burrell's Midnight Blue and Coltrane's Blue Train. So I kind of wanted to pay a tribute to those and to my own entry point with an album that I haven't seen shown too much. And I know a lot of you have this and listen to it, but I kind of feel like no one really talks about this record. This was originally recorded in March of '58 by Rudy Van Gelder and put out on Prestige. I believe this is in the era in the late '50s when Coltrane was part of Davis's group. And this actually didn't come out until '63, I believe. This is an Analog Productions pressing from their top 25 jazz series, double 45 RPM disc, and on Prestige, obviously, and Paul Chambers on bass, Jimmy Cobb on drums, Tommy Flanagan on piano, and Train on tenor. I am a guitarist by trade, so I really resonated with Kenny Burrell when I first heard it, and especially Grant Green. But I feel like this is a kind of an overlooked album from both of these artists, and one that you don't really see too often.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. No, and Kenny Burrell, you got Wes Montgomery, of course, who gets a lot of claim to fame, and then I can't even remember his name. Grant Green. Yeah, the other guitarist. So he was Montgomery and Kenny Burrell. I mean, those are like the top three for me. And Kenny Burrell, I think, is really underappreciated. And yeah, that album, yeah, it isn't bad. And that pressing done by Kevin Gray, yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, I know it's been redone and repressed in kind of less audiophile manner. So yeah. I think this is kind of hard to come by, the Analog Productions version, but
they're slowly disappearing, and they're becoming harder and harder to find. Mm-hmm. It's one that I'm hoping that they'll redo on 33 1/3 with a nice Stoughton jacket at some point.
Seems like it's long overdue for that.
Yeah, exactly.
In the new Acoustic Sounds series you're doing or something.
Yeah.
All right, what do you got?
All right, so the next one, and I try to go for a variety of genres here. So I went with Nick Hakim. So he is a Washington, D.C. based artist. His family is originally from South America, and so he was really big into funk, soul, and hip hop growing up. And this is a nice mixture of soul and psychedelic music. So this is his first album, and it came out in 2017, and he came out with a new one, I want to say back in March. But this is, a solid 10 for me. The only downside to this album was that it's put out by ATO Records, and ATO likes to use United. And yeah, United pressings are just terrible. But this one turned out okay for me. Has a nice inner sleeve.
What's the name again of the artist?
What was that?
What's the artist name?
Nick Hakim.
Hakim, okay.
Yeah. And this is, sorry, I should probably say the name of the album and I forget it. Green Twins.
Fear I never wanted to show you.
Very trippy cover.
Yeah. It looks just like it sounds, but it has this nice soul vibe to it. Great. So yeah, soul, psychedelia, science fiction. Yeah, it's wonderful.
Ticking all the boxes for you.
What was that? Yeah. Checking off all those boxes.
Wow. So a solid 10. I got to. Yeah. That's a solid recommend there.
Yep, I recommend it.
Great. I'll go next. This is the 6-part 7, Things Shaped in Passing. This is another nod back to the late 90s, early aughts. This was a band from Kent, Ohio, long defunct. I think their last album was in 2007 or 8. This is on a nice gatefold double record. Let's see. Suicide Squeeze Records, which is based in Seattle, put this out. And the 6-part 7, I believe, were a 5-piece band that had vibraphone, lap steel or pedal steel, guitar, drums, and bass. No lyrics of any kind. It's like pure instrumental. I guess you could lump it into the post-rock if you wanted to, but it has a lot more kind of jazz influences. The main guitarist plays a Gibson 335, which is a semi-hollow body jazz and blues guitar. Really mellow, and but yeah, steel slide guitar, it says. Really interesting arrangements. All the songs sort of kind of blend into one another. None really stand out tonally differently from the rest, so they're all kind of the same feeling. They have a lot of interesting song titles. The first song is called "Where Are the Timpani Heartbeats?" They're just kind of playful, artistic. I'm sure these guys went to art school in Ohio. But I caught them on tour, and actually, they're one of the only bands I've ever followed on tour. I saw them play in Dallas, Houston, and Austin.
Oh, wow.
On the tour for this record. And in Houston, they played at a place on Washington called Mary Jane's. I don't know if you ever heard of it.
No, I haven't heard of that place.
It's long gone. And I was one of maybe 10 people in the audience.
Those are the best shows to see when the audience is small.
But this is a highly underrated band. Their last couple records kind of petered out in terms of, the quality to me, but I think they had one before this and the one after this. This one especially, though, Things Shaped in Passing. It's like really nice evening kind of low light music, and this is actually really hard to find. I think they only pressed it once, at 1,000 or 2,000 copies. So, and it's on nice kind of marbled gray vinyl. I believe it's 45 RPM too. Yeah, 45 RPM.
You're pretty good at getting me in trouble. You show me these rare records, and then I go to look for them in Discogs, and they're like over $100. It's like the Caretaker. It's like you got me hooked on that album, and that was just fantastic. But yeah, to get a good pressing, it's like over $100.
Yeah, well, it's worth it for the good music, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
My first entryway into the audiophile world was through your videos, and we were talking about Music Matters and Mo-Fi, and I'm starting looking up these titles, and you got me in trouble too, sir.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that in a future video, but with the Music Matters, I lucked out because I got in on them early before all the prices started to skyrocket. And like now I look at it, I rarely look back after I get a record, but I already know just talking to people how much they're going for. And it's like, I wouldn't care to spend that amount. I mean, I'll just wait for a repress on something else. So both you and I know that, neoclassical is not shown that frequently within the vinyl community, which I think is unfortunate because there's a lot of great music being put out. And this artist, she started out completely different, but she has been putting out neoclassical work, and this is Emika. And she's based in the UK. And this is Klavirni Temna, and I think it's Czech. And just looking at some of the roots, it means dark piano. And so these are all piano pieces, and I want to say there's probably 14 piano pieces on here, but she mixes, as the pieces progress, she mixes in a little more electronic and reverb, and until you get to the very end, and then it like ends in this droning hum, which makes it very interesting. But she has 2 albums. This is the second one of piano pieces, but it's a little bit strange. So her first records came out on Ninja Tune, and she was kind of billed as a dubstep trip hop artist. And she does singing and does a lot of dubstep and trip hop. But, listening to her early albums, which she does have a little bit of classical mixed in, you wouldn't expect this at all. And right now she's based out of Berlin, and she's doing a lot of music in Germany. But this is just fantastic. I mean, especially if you're into solo piano.
Great. What's the label on that?
It's her own, Emika Records.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Is that a high gloss cover there?
No, I think it's just the shrink.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
You know, there are people that just will rip the shrink off. I'm indifferent.
That's cool. I need to check that out. I've never.
Yeah. No. This was a Bandcamp sample. Late night, I found her work, and it was just fantastic. And I had heard her previously on Ninja Tune. It's like I've heard her before, and then when I went to look at her in Discogs, I'm like, it's not the same person, but it was.
So the Ninja Tune stuff is a little more like dubstep, like electronic.
Centric. Yeah.
That's so great label. So
yeah,
she's probably grew up classically trained, and then has kind of gone back to the roots a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Cool, Emika. Great.
Yeah, I think you'd enjoy it.
I'm sure I would. I like piano-based compositions, especially on the minimal edge of things. Okay, my fourth one is an ECM release that was a live record. This is one of the most prolific artists that I'm familiar with. Bill Frisell.
Yeah.
So most people that are into music and into guitar and of certain ages, I think, know who Bill Frisell is. This is a live duo recording from the Village Vanguard in New York City with the bassist Thomas Morgan. So upright, double bass, and guitar, all electric guitar. But this is absolutely incredible. Let's see. The opening track is a Paul Motion track, who is the drummer from the original Bill Evans trio. There's a Lee Konitz track, and then on side B there's a Fats Domino track. But the title track, Small Town, side 3, is just this long meandering piece that has this kind of repeating motif that is like gets ingrained in your head immediately. It's so catchy. And, you know, Bill Frisell is hit or miss for me. Some of the stuff gets a little too esoteric and a little too free for my own taste, kind of turns me off. But some of the stuff is really kind of understated and simple. And this is definitely as a duet performance, just with bass and guitar. I mean, it's so lush. And this is a double album put out by ECM in 2016. So highly recommended.
Yeah, he's one of those artists that I've never delved into. And in fact, he came out with a new one that was just dropped on Blue Note. Yep. And Blue Note did a promotional video, and it seemed kind of interesting. But yeah, he's just an artist I've never touched. I might have to check that out.
Yeah, so this new album on Blue Note, Valentine, and his previous one I think was also on Blue Note, are a little more jazzy and a little more free and kind of complex. This stuff is still, I mean, amazing guitar playing, but a little more simple in terms of the song structures. So if you're into guitar and bass, and you know it's jazz influenced, but it's not necessarily jazz music. It's on ECM, which is kind of so it kind of borders those two worlds. But
yeah, exactly.
I think this is some of the most music that speaks to me the most from all across his catalog. Yeah.
Yeah, and usually ECM does a really nice job with their pressings too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you know where they press their wax?
So I want to say I've had a couple that have come from Optimal, and then I've had a couple that have come from Pallas. And you know, in my opinion, Pallas in Germany is probably the best ever pressing plant, because you know every pressing plant will have its number of defects, but in terms of Pallas, I've only had one bad album come from that plant.
Our mutual friend Michael, the 45 RPM audiophile, I believe in some video a few weeks back mentioned that Pallas or however you say it was his optimal pressing plant as well.
Yeah.
Which hard to argue. the German precision and engineering, you know.
Yeah, exactly. So the next one I got is from the mid 90s, and this is Visit Venus. and the album is Music for Space Tourism Volume 1. And it's the only volume that they came out with. It's a German duo, and they kind of wrote up this synopsis that, after the Apollo program died, NASA had to come up with a way to reinvent itself, and so they were trying to hype space tourism, and so these two guys were contracted to write music for a commercial for space tourism in the 70s. But really what it is it's a sample-based album. There's a little bit of house elements in there. It's down-tempo, trip-hop, and, again, the cover basically speaks how it sounds. So, it gets locked in a groove, and then, it's one that you could play late night if you just want to relax and chill out a bit. Yeah. But yeah, they had one album come out after this called The Endless Bummer. And, you can still find them at a reasonable price. And what's interesting is there's a new artist out on Bandcamp called Vast Voyage that was influenced by these guys. But I like what Vast Voyage is doing a little bit more because it incorporates more jazz into this down-tempo stuff. So it just makes for a nice eclectic mix.
Cool. Yeah, the artwork kind of nods to exactly how you described it.
Yeah, and here's their story, their fake story about, hey, NASA contacted us to do this music, but they'd never release it. It's archived, so we put out this album now so you can hear it.
Compelling concept.
Yeah.
Have you told your cronies about that?
No. And unfortunately, there are very few people around me that are really into music. I used to have a good friend that, we would talk music quite a bit, but she went to work for KFC, and now my music buddy at NASA is gone.
You have to enlist a new recruit.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, I think we're winding down on our time here, so I'll kind of speed up on this. My last choice here. This looks like a white album, but it's actually this was a live record from a memorial service by the pianist Harold Budd, B-U-D-D.
Okay.
It's called Perhaps, and this was pressed by a small label from San Francisco that's gone now called Root Strata.
Okay.
Which was co-operated by the musician Jeffrey Cantu Ledesma. If you're familiar with him, he releases on Mexican Summer, kind of ambient, really great stuff. But this album, he was on the composition faculty at Cal Arts in Pasadena in the 70s with this man named James Tinney. They were kind of music buds, and James passed away, and Harold was asked to perform piano at his memorial service, and they actually set up a recording. And so a lot of this music was actually from his memorial service. It's just improvised solo piano.
Wow.
So imagine kind of like Keith Jarrett-y, but less jazz and more minimal.
Okay. Interesting.
Harold Budd has worked with Brian Eno and Daniel Lanois and a few others, but this is all just like extremely sparse piano. An album I think I've shown it once on another video, but it's called Perhaps, and it's very contemplative and kind of somber, but kind of in like a good way. It's not depressing really, but it's definitely not upbeat music by any means. But I highly recommend it. Let's see. Yeah, but this is recorded in 2006, and I think this came out in 2015 or 16. And I'm sure you can find it on Discogs. Harold Budd.
Yeah, and I like Harold Budd. I have a couple of his albums. In fact, I think I picked up one of his albums 2 or 3 years ago that he did with 2 other artists, and it's just wonderful ambient type work. But yeah, I've never seen that one before.
Yeah, I think I just found this from a Spotify algorithm.
Huh.
I don't really remember, but picked it up. They had it at my local shop here, Waterloo in Austin.
Okay. Huh.
In the experimental, like, new age composer section, that's only about, that deep. Harold Budd.
All right. So the last one I got is by the Charlottes, and this is Things Come Apart. And this is a wonderful shoegaze album. So it came out during probably the peak of the shoegaze time frame, which was 1991, when My Bloody Valentine came out with Loveless, which, I actually learned about My Bloody Valentine through the VC, and there were so many people showing that particular album, but the Charlottes only had 2 records. This was the second one, and then they disbanded. The drummer went off and, joined the group Slow Dive,
okay,
which is another shoegaze group in their own right. But, this has a wonderful cover of Venus. Female singer, and just like a good shoegaze album, you have all the distortion pedals, you got the vocals. So yeah, I found this really enjoyable. This is a reissue that was done on green wax. I actually need to clean it up, but I'd like to seek out an original of this one. This was actually a bit of VCLT, but the originals were done by George Peckham. So George Peckham, he would inscribe Porky in the dead wax. And so, he was famous for like putting other things in there, like messages. And I think he put like Night Night Porky on one side. So yeah, I'd like to find an original of this guy.
Wow. That's great. Yeah, I mean, I've never heard of that. Of course, My Bloody Valentine and Slow Dive and all that, and Ride, and those UK shoegaze bands that's right up my alley. But I've never heard of that band name or seen that. That's great.
Yeah. So I didn't know about that one at all, and I got to thank the Omaha Introvert, because she sent it to me. Because yeah, she's really into shoegaze, and she's done several videos just on that genre. So that's her specific niche. And she's like, I got something for you. I want to send it to you, because she knows that I like shoegaze as well. And yeah, I got it, and I'm like, I've never heard of this band. And so yeah, it was nice. It was another solid album all the way throughout.
Oh, I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah. Hopefully I can include the splice in some samples. If not, I'll put in links down below so folks can check it out for themselves.
Yeah. Well, man, thanks so much for sharing all those. That was great.
Yeah, no, thank you. I didn't know any of them except for the Coltrane Burrell record.
Yep. I didn't know any of yours, so a lot to listen to tonight.
Yeah, exactly. So hopefully we'll see how long it takes me to splice things together with work, but hopefully I can get it out within the next few days or so, I hope. Great. Fingers crossed. All right. Well, thanks, Michael. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for watching, everyone.
Yeah.